This is She Creates Business, a podcast for wedding pros. Your host, Kinsey Roberts, interviews incredible women in the wedding industry who are making their mark and creating success on their terms. Join the conversation.
Well, hey there and happy Thursday. Welcome to episode 66 of She Creates Business, a podcast for wedding pros. This is your host, Kinsey Roberts. Today, we are talking about ways you can build, and not only build, but also nurture vendor relationships. I think that every time I talk on the podcast about how people get business, or just in conversations offline about ways folks are getting business in their wedding business, how they are, getting referrals, it's a lot of it's from vendor partners. And I think nurturing and building those vendor partner relationships is so imperative to our businesses, even in this online world. I cannot tell you enough how many times I've heard people say they get referrals from past clients, they get referrals from vendor partners. So referrals are huge. And I really think that you'll be able to take these tips today about how to build and nurture vendor relationships to, any in-person face-to-face relationship, whether that's clients, whether that's folks that you want to work with, whether that's ones you've worked with in the past, but you want them to, kind of remember that you're there so that you can refer each other business. I think having mutually beneficial relationships in business is so key. And it's really important for us to kind of be the ringleaders and start the conversation and be the one who encourages that in our local markets. I think it's important for us to kind of take the lead in that area because relationships are incredibly important. And I know I keep saying that, but it's so true. A couple weeks ago, I did a video for a kind of an online summit in a Facebook group. It was called Selling with Generosity. And my talk was all about making genuine connections that are mutually beneficial in business. And I cannot tell you how many comments I got on that was just like, yes. Even though we're in an online world, we really need to be, communicating with people face to face, and not just at the wedding, not just at the rehearsal, but, consistently all year. Today, I have Geomyra Lewis Pollard to talk to us about that. I am so looking forward to chatting with her. Geomyra, as you'll hear from her bio here in a second, has over a decade of experience in the wedding industry, and I could not think of a better person to talk to us about ways that she builds and nurtures those client-vendor relationships. So, Geomyra Lewis Pollard is the owner and creative director behind Geomyra Lewis Weddings and Events, GLWE as she likes to call it. A native of Washington, D.C., Geomyra is the daughter of George and Myra. That is where she got her name, and I absolutely adore that. I think it's absolutely beautiful. She's passionate about her family, faith, and focuses on what matters most. With over a decade of experience in the wedding and event industry, Geomyra has a stellar reputation among her clients and colleagues as being a detail-oriented planner. She is known for producing jaw-dropping events while managing her clients, the GLWE team, and creative partners with ease and poise. As an entrepreneur encourager, Geomyra finds joy in working with creative entrepreneurs as they work to build meaningful brands and businesses. She believes we should do all things with grace, passion, and purpose. Geomyra is married to her high school sweetheart and is the proud mama of Payton and Jackson. So without further ado, let's go to the show with Geomyra Lewis Pollard and talk to her about building vendor relationships and nurturing those relationships throughout the year. Geomyra Lewis, welcome to the show.
Hello, Kinsey. How are you?
So well. Thank you so much. How are you?
I am fantastic.
Good. I was just telling Geomyra, so I told you guys this kind of in the intro, but we met each other at the VIP intensive in DC that we both attended. And I was lucky enough so Geomyra has been in the industry for so long, and I was lucky enough to kind of hear her speak on it a little bit and chat with us, and learned a ton just from like the brief questions or things that she contributed to the conversation. And so when she said yes to coming on the podcast, I was so excited. So Geomyra, we're going to have a lot of fun today.
I'm excited.
Good. Okay. So as I mentioned, I gave everyone, that professional bio that we all have at the top of the show, but I would love, in your own words, if you would just briefly tell us who you are and how you currently serve the wedding industry.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. And thank you again, Kinsey, for your intro and warm welcome. And I'm a huge fan of She Creates Business and just you in general. So I am beyond excited at the opportunity to chat with you today and just share on a topic that I'm just really passionate about. So more about me, I'm Geomyra, and I always follow that with explaining that I'm named after my parents, George and Myra. I am a proud wife. I'm a mama to two spunky little people. I'm a wedding planner and designer serving the DC metro area, as well as we do destination events and social events as well. And lastly, I also provide coaching services for creative entrepreneurs and have been in the game for about 11 years now.
Yes. And so I love that. It's, I think that there is a place for everyone to kind of share their story, no matter how long they've been in the industry and, in any industry. And that's kind of why I created the podcast. But it's especially helpful for me when I can hear from really the pros, like have been at it for so many years like you have. And so I think that especially this topic today about like vendor relationships and nurturing those relationships is going to be wonderful coming from someone like you, because you've had this extended length of experience and have seen so many facets of relationships, I'm imagining, in the last 11 years.
Absolutely. You see it all, as a planner, the good, the bad, the ugly. And I always say that, planners are like the quarterbacks and the captain of the ship, just making sure that everyone is knowing what they need to do and just feeling good about the day overall for the wedding.
I love that. Planners are the quarterbacks.
Yeah, we
That's
are
your
the
tweetable.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
So tell me, let's jump right into this. I'm really excited about this topic. I wonder if you could tell us, especially being in business for the last 11 years, how have vendor relationships and nurturing those relationships over time, how would you say they've impacted your career and your business?
Well, it's a great question. I always say that there's no way I could do what I do without my creative partners. The process of planning and executing someone's most important day is truly a team effort, not just with the relationships between myself and my clients, but also between myself and the vendors. You only deal with the clients typically once. That's the goal as a wedding planner, that you don't have repeat, weddings with the same clients. But you do hope to interact with vendors on numerous occasions. And I think sometimes there are vendors who make the mistake of, they'll love on their client and they'll treat them so well, but then they don't do the same for their vendor partners. And so, I figured out a while back that it's critical for vendors to nurture the relationships in hopes of building up their networks. And, it's also like in our industry, entrepreneurs, we work by ourselves the majority of the time. But on the wedding day, we all do have to work together and collaborate to create something magical. So because of that, I have made it a personal mission of mine to not only focus on the relationship that I have with the clients, but also the creative partners to ensure that our client's vision comes to life. So, and that's the reason why I would say that the majority of my inquiries are due to vendor referrals, is because of the care that I put into building those relationships.
That's such a good point. I wonder, you just mentioned that, and I loved what you said, that planners are the quarterbacks. What would be your advice to the other vendors listening? Like myself, I'm a venue owner. What would be your advice if maybe there's a planner working on a wedding that we're all part of, but they are not really taking on that role as a quarterback? How can we communicate with them to maybe change that?
I think it's important for vendors, venues, photographers, cinematographers, whoever, that just to be present, from the beginning. If you're going to be working with a planner, just reach out to them and make sure that they know who you are and that you are excited to be a part of the team, and just be present and just be available to them. I think that's very important. There will be some people who that's just not where their strong suit is. So, it's important that you do reach out to them so that they can just know that you are around and that you do care. And then you just have to make the decision on, are those people that you do want to work with going forward if they don't match how you handle business, basically.
Oh, I love that. And I think that really semantics and like the verbiage that you just said can actually be a huge help if we're working with another vendor or a planner, like specifically in this case, who may be not communicating with the other vendors. I think just saying, I'm excited to be part of your vendor team. I think really those semantics, they seem so simple, but could be very significant. Would you agree?
Absolutely. That's one of the things that if a vendor does reach out in advance and they introduce themselves, they let me know who they are. I take note of those things because it lets me know that they are thinking ahead and that they are preparing and that they are excited, to work with me. And that, it always makes you feel good to know that people are excited to get to know you, to work with you, and just to be a part of the team. So that goes a long way, that gesture of just showing up and just saying, hey, how are you? I'm excited.
I love that. That's so smart. So tell me, when you first started, I mean, now you're obviously very well versed in building relationships and keeping those relationships current and going. But when you first started, what did that look like for you?
It's funny because, like many entrepreneurs and creatives, I didn't know what the heck I was getting myself into when I decided to become a wedding planner and start my business in 2006. But I did know that I wanted to be seen, respected, and trusted by my couples and my peers. So when I started, I mainly did month of event coordination because at the time I, had a full-time gig and was just starting my business. But the month of event coordination allowed me the opportunity to be exposed to other vendors for each event. So you always get a whole new team of vendors 9 times out of 10 if you're doing month of coordination. And by taking on those month of weddings, I was able to interact with vendors with various experience levels. So as a planner, I went out of my way to make sure my vendors were taken care of on the event day, even before the event day, and even post-wedding. And by showing my professionalism, my work ethic, and excitement for not only the clients, but as we mentioned earlier, but also the vendors, I noticed that the vendors were reaching out with hopes of partnering on more events. So like we mentioned earlier, if you just go a step ahead and say, hey, I'm excited, I'm looking forward to it, then people pay attention to that. And then you're already on their radar before the event even starts. And, the golden rule is just to also treat people the way you want to be treated. That's a lesson I'm constantly preaching to my 7-year-old daughter. And it's just a golden rule in life and in business. And if you just bring that positive energy to each wedding that you handle, it just means so much. So I just think if you are trying to build those relationships, you just go into it with positive attitude, positive energy, and people will definitely take note of that.
So great. What would you say, what are some things that have really stood out to you, aside from like saying, hey, I'm available and reaching out and kind of the things we've discussed? What are some, maybe just 1 or 2 examples of things that vendors have done for you? And they can be, physical things like they sent us a gift or whatever that they've done for you and your team that have really stuck out to you. So maybe, as a venue owner or a photographer or designer listening, we're thinking, hey, maybe we could do that too for our planners or other vendors.
Well, everybody, like you said, loves a good gift. That's always great. But I would just say that looking back, the relationships and partnerships that have lasted over the years are just due to the mutual respect and the passion for the industry. And if you are able to partner with vendors that have the good intentions for clients, I think that also goes a long way. And if vendors do go above and beyond for my clients, myself, that's something that's very special. Things that people can do that's just not like a physical thing, but just be responsive, be professional, have that good energy, and do all those things in advance. And I think from photographer standpoint, one thing that some photographers don't do, and that is share images. Same with the cinematographers. It just means a lot when the photographer is able to say, hey, here's a sneak peek of some of the images from, Susie and John's wedding. It was great working with you. Feel free to use these for your portfolio. And by doing that, that just says, hey, they were thinking about me and they appreciate the work and effort that I may have put into designing an event. Mm-hmm. So that goes a long way. And I also would say just overall, like with catering managers, when they reach out and they invite us to menu tastings and whatnot, it also gives us the opportunity to build that one-on-one relationship with them, because it's very hard to do that when you're actually in the thick of the action on the actual wedding day. So I just think it's great when people do set up those private meetings and whatnot, because it does allow for you to get to know them, get to know their business, and just get to interact with them on that one-on-one basis.
Love that. I want to kind of unpack something that you said. You said earlier about, things people have done for you, mutual respect, they have passion for the industry. And then you said they really genuinely care about the clients.
Absolutely.
I love that. Let's unpack that a little bit, because I think that that's really important. And I would imagine likely very obvious if people are just there doing a job. So what are the difference between people just doing a job and people who actually care about your clients? And how can we spot those people in our own vendor relationships?
I think it goes back to I always check in, with the clients. And sometimes I'm not involved in every single communication that the client may have with the vendor.
Mm-hmm.
But I always say, hey, how's it going with the caterer? How's the photographer? How was your engagement shoot? Like different things like that. And they can say, oh, it was fantastic. We enjoyed working with them. They were, such a great presence to be around. And then you'll get some people that says, hey, I can't reach the florist. I've been trying to get in touch with her. And so that's how I also spot it, is how do they treat my clients when I'm not around? Because there are some people that will, once they get that contract and that retainer, they're not necessarily 100% involved. They may be focusing on just the event they have in front of them. And I just feel like people have to remember that this is someone's most important day. There are some people who saved for a lifetime for this event, and there are no do-overs in this industry. So it's important that everyone understands that message that's on the team, and they just go above and beyond for each person's event. This may be my 100th wedding, but this is as a planner, but it's someone's one and only. So you do need to make sure you align with vendors that feel that same way.
Oh, that's so good. What a great way to think of it. And I think it's sometimes easy, and it's not, we all do it. We're just human beings. It's like, okay, here's another wedding. Like maybe it's the end of wedding season and you're exhausted, and that's totally understandable. But just as Geomyra said, it might be your, 30th wedding this year, but it's their first, their one and only. It's, they haven't done it 30 times. And
absolutely,
I think when we break it down to that super logistical, realistic level, it's so easy to say, okay, this is their one thing. And so now I'm going to give it 110%.
Absolutely. And I just feel like you should always raise the bar. Each event, even if you're at the same venue over and over again, it's like even when we go plan and design, okay, what can we do differently? What have we not seen before? And then just get excited about each event as if it is your first, and, just as excited as you were from the beginning, because there's so much potential in each event that you do. So I just think that that's important as well.
Oh, I love that. Do something new so you can be excited about it.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you, what is your thought, especially being in the business for 11 years, what is your thought about, sorry, I'm stuttering a little bit, recommended vendor lists, or only working with specific vendors versus working with a variety of people to get to know, maybe newer vendors or ones you haven't worked with yet? Where do you fall in that line?
I'm both ways. I like, as I mentioned with the month of, by doing month of in the beginning, and we still do, a few event management for some clients, I've found that because clients have found other vendors on their own, there's been some great talent that I may not have been exposed to if the client hadn't brought them to my attention. Here in DC, we have such a great talent pool of vendors. And so I just have been exposed to those vendors through my clients. So I'm open to that, but I'm also a planner that will research the vendor way before the event day. So I know what I'm getting into. I can tell my client about any red flags or things like that in advance. But then I'm also a fan of a preferred vendor list, because most likely you know what you're going to get. And so you can kind of rest easy in certain areas, and you can focus on bigger issues versus having maybe a DJ that's not going to respond, or people you're not familiar with. So I'm both ways. I feel like there are pros and cons to both, because a preferred vendor list can keep some new up and coming blood off of the list, and they may have, let's say, a planner who's just, a little tired and may not just be in it and as enthusiastic. So it can go either way.
Okay. Smart. This is a totally self-serving question, but how do vendors and planners feel about venues having preferred lists, or only these people can come to this venue?
Again, same thing.
Okay.
It's just like for a venue, I always say it's your house, it's your home. And so when I go to a venue, I always ask, like, what are your rules? What are your restrictions? And what can we do to make sure that we take care and respect your home? So just like with your personal space, do you just allow any and everybody into your house? Absolutely not. So I understand why there are certain lists, but I do think sometimes they should have an option for planners and clients to present a vendor to them that they may not be aware of. And then they can just kind of vet those people and see if they could be a great add-on to their venue.
Okay, smart. I love that. Tell me, Geomyra, I wonder, okay, so let's see. Okay, let's start with if we're newer in business, and then we'll move on to if we are, no, actually, let me back up. Let's start if we've been in the business for a while, because you just said something I want to shine a light on. You just said, having kind of fresh blood, people who are excited might be great, because planners who've maybe been in the game for a while, maybe they're tired and maybe kind of they're just going through the motions. And so how can we love on those vendors? It's kind of like a marriage in a way. You can get really comfortable and you can, stop those things that make that person feel special and loved and valued. And so I would love some really like 3 tactical ideas that we can use for nurturing or like reinvigorating is maybe a better word, reinvigorating those relationships with our current vendors instead of just saying like, well, we're married, so we don't have to do that.
That is so funny because that's how you see it. Like, I think as vendor partners, we just get really comfortable with the people we frequently work with. And sometimes we may take them for granted, not realizing that there is that new planner or that new photographer that's just waiting to take your spot. And so you do have to keep that in mind. And you also just have to know that, like I said, people are watching from the sidelines, and you just need to be consistent in how you treat your vendor partner from the beginning. You were excited to work with them in the beginning. You need to be excited to work with them throughout, as long as they're doing their part. You just need to make sure that you're just saying, you know what, I appreciate you and I'm excited to work with you again, and just, reach out to them as much as possible. And I just think that as you are consistent in your communication, you will also be able to produce quality work. And by doing so, vendors will be more inclined to work with you on future events. And it takes a lot to build relationships and your reputation, but it takes no time for relationships and trust to be broken when you do lack consistency. I would also say another tip is to spoil your creative partners. I learned a few years back that is very critical. I made the decision to pull all of my print advertisement when I realized that the return on investment just wasn't there for me personally. So instead, I built into my budget vendor appreciation and love gifts. So in lieu of advertising the traditional way, I curate branded gifts that are delivered a few times a year to vendors that just say, hey, thinking about you, enjoy working with you, and just let them know that I appreciate them. And then you'll have those new vendors that you may want to work with. And I'll also send gifts to a few new people and say, hey, this is who I am. Would love to collaborate with you in the future. And the vendors, I found they love that gesture. It's more personable. And that's where I choose to invest my money now, is loving on my vendors. And it also just keeps my name and my business on their radar, which is always great. I would say another tip is to just focus on quality over quantity. And that's just my approach in my business overall. So it's hard to juggle various relationships and people. We're all so busy. So in order to build solid and meaningful relationships with vendors, you need to be intentional with who you choose to partner with and where you spend your time. So when you do that, you are able to grow deeper relationships with substance and longevity. And if you are able to build with just a handful of your favorite venues, like in your case, Kinsey, and with photographers that you admire, they will be more likely to refer you to other businesses, which will, honestly translate into paying your bills and also get you on that preferred vendor list if you do just think about a small group of people that you want to work with instead of trying to just go after everybody who has a business.
I am so glad, Geomyra, you shared that about pulling your print budget and putting that into vendor gifts, because I remember you said that at the VIP intensive, and I thought that was so brilliant and also very it was just so like intuitive of you to say, okay, here's what I'm paying out in marketing right now. So you guys, if you didn't catch that, Geomyra just said that what she did, when was this? Was this like last year or a couple of years ago?
It was probably about 2 years ago when I realized I was spending thousands of dollars just in print. It was one magazine I was paying $4,000 to. And I'm like, if I just take that $4,000 that I'm sending to a magazine editor and I divide that up with a small group of people, I can literally send them luxury gifts that makes me stand out, and they're more likely to refer me versus me taking the gamble on, is someone going to notice me amongst 50 other planners in my area.
Ah, yes, I love that. It's so good, especially, and not that you have to do this. Like, I don't think Geomyra is saying, like, pull your marketing budget and then
Oh, no,
buy gifts.
absolutely.
Like, but
No.
what she did is she was so diligent and said, okay, what is my ROI on this and what am I actually getting money from? And that was, what she just said. Referrals translated into paying your bills. And so that's where she kind of like shifted some of her marketing budget away from print, which was not bringing in an ROI, into her vendor relationships, which were bringing referral, which of course equals dollars in the bank. And I just feel like that is such a brilliant business move. It's so simple and significant. And I'm so glad you shared that.
Yeah, it works for, print or has worked for other planner friends, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just their, that's their way of getting business. But for me, it just wasn't there. And so, everyone has to do what works best for their business.
I could not agree more. So, how did you actually decide to look at that? Really, I mean, where did that just thought come into your head, or had you already been having some feelings about your print advertising budget, where you kind of like, man, this isn't really working? Tell me how you came to that conclusion to say, I'm going to look at this.
Well, so I have a spreadsheet. So anytime we receive an inquiry from someone, we note how on our website, it says, how did you hear about us? So anytime we do get an inquiry, we put it into our spreadsheet. And so you can see in the column of how people are finding us and then how many of those are actually converted into bookings. So I would see like if someone found us on Wedding Wire or on Instagram or whatever magazine or social media platform, we can see that. And then we can determine, okay, well, maybe we need to amp up our Instagram postings, or maybe we need to change our portfolio on, let's say, Style Me Pretty to make sure we are obtaining that business. So just keeping track of where people find you will tell you a lot about your business and where you should be investing.
Okay, I love that. And where I want to talk about that spreadsheet a little bit later once we get to like the tools portion of our program. So because that sounds really awesome. You just said something and I want to ask you this. This doesn't really have to do with vendor relationships, but I'm curious to know what you think about online profiles on places like Wedding Wire and Style Me Pretty and places like that.
I think having a online presence is mandatory because a lot of people, we live on our phones. And I just think that people need to, including myself, actually take a look at it periodically and make sure it's up to date, make sure it has your best work on there, because our attention spans are very short. So we'll scroll and we're on to the next person. So just have your online profile showcase your best work, the type of people you want to work with, and then people will be more inclined to actually click on it and then inquire about your services.
Okay. Do you think it's necessary to invest? In your opinion, of course, I know everyone will have a different school of thought, but in your opinion, do you think it's necessary to invest in those paid profiles on those kind of directories? Or do you think a free profile, as long as we keep it up and, make it nice as much as we can, is enough? What are your thoughts on that?
I think people have to observe their market.
Okay.
As I mentioned here in DC, and we call it DMV because DC, Maryland, Virginia, I think that you do have to. It's a million of us. So what are you going to do so that people do see you? Because honestly, are people going to the 12th page of certain sites? Probably not, because we're very busy people. So sometimes if you do invest so that you are more visible, I think that goes a long way. But just test it out. You're not married to the website or the platform. So if it hasn't worked for you after a few tries, then it's time to move on to something else until something sticks.
Yes, I love that. You are so like, give it a shot. If it doesn't work, move on.
Move on. Yep.
Okay. So you just mentioned a spreadsheet. I love this part of the show. These are our last couple of questions. I am so curious what you use in your business to like manage your projects, manage your weddings, manage your other creative pursuits, because I know you have a few. So tell me what you got going on there. What do you use to manage those things?
So I've been a Basecamp user since 2011. And that's what we use to manage projects within my team and just also to interact with my clients. And I'm still an Excel girl and will still use like Google Docs and Sheets and all that, which is great because if you are working on a spreadsheet with your client, they can pull it up and you don't have to necessarily save it and send it. But so I just love everything Google, apps, email, and all that jazz. And I'm also, Kinsey from the VIP Intensive, Raina had suggested Dubsado. Mm-hmm. So I'm testing that out. Haven't gotten into it just yet, but it looks awesome. So I'm trying that out.
Me too. For the
Yeah.
venue.
So absolutely. Okay, good. Yeah. So I'm going to see how that works. And then I use Evernote for taking notes and recipes, list making, because you can access that on the go as well. And what other things are we using? I just love everything Google Drive. I think that is great because clients can always see what the updates are and I don't have to send them back and forth. And then for keeping files and keeping everything organized, I love Dropbox. That's something that I love Dropbox. And then something that I'm loving is our podcast. I'm all into the podcast listening and Audible because I'm able to learn things and get work done that way. So I'm also educating myself by listening to some of the great podcasters like yourself and a few other people that I admire.
Oh, yes. We're on that like spoken media train together because I love Audible too. Have you listened to any like really good books that you've loved recently?
I've been reading Tribed or listening and Crush It. I'm reading The Purpose-Driven Life. I'm reading that now. And for podcasts, I'm loving How I Built This. Creative Empire is great. So there are a few that I try to listen to and as much as I can. And my daughter knows now. And she's like, Mommy's listening to a podcast. She knows. Just like no more music, just podcasts. So she's back there listening as well.
Oh, I love that. Geomyra, this has been so much fun. I have seriously learned a ton today. I'm sure I can speak for the audience and say we learned so much today, or maybe we invigorated our desire to keep up our relationships. And so first, I just want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you for having me.
It's been my absolute pleasure. Okay, before I get into asking you like what's on the horizon, what's new in your business in 2017, I would love for you to tell people where they can find you online.
So on Instagram, I'm at Geomyra Lewis Events. Same with Facebook, facebook.com/Geomyra Lewis.
Perfect. So tell us, what do you have coming up this year? What are you excited about?
I actually have a few local speaking engagements here in DC. I'm excited about that. We're gearing up for wedding season. We have some destination weddings and some awesome clients that I'm excited to work with. And as you know, Kinsey, I am going to be launching my officially Coaching for Creatives program, which is a one-on-one coaching program, yay, for creative entrepreneurs, which I'm excited about because it allows me to marry my years of experience as an entrepreneur and my formal education, which is in business and entrepreneurship. So very excited about that. I'm working with some great people right now, but I'm going to actually open the doors to others who are looking to sustain their business, streamline processes, and just live a more well-rounded life, which is something I am also passionate about. So launching this spring, so excited and just, looking forward to this next chapter in my business.
Oh my gosh, I'm looking forward to it as well. And I will keep the show notes updated I'll keep an eye on the business and make sure that I include the contact information for your mentorship program and make sure we stick that in the show notes. And as we record, it's March 8th, but I think this is airing like in the summer. So it should be out and ready to go, but check the show notes because I'm sure I put it in there. Geomyra, thank you so very much for being here. I truly enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you. I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Me too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to She Creates Business. Please take a minute and head to iTunes to leave an honest review so we can help more wedding pros find the show.